The moment I became aware of my role as the vicious female supporting character, the male lead, my childhood friend whom I had imprisoned and tortured, was kneeling at my feet, his teeth gritted against the pain, his body trembling. As I fumbled to untie him, my own hands were shaking. He let out a cold, sharp laugh. "Weren't you going to kill me, Miss Astor?" My hands froze. In the original storyline, Arya Astor, wasn't just cruel to Daniel. I kept him locked away, tormenting him in every way imaginable until his hatred for me turned to stone. In the end, he had me thrown into a psychiatric ward, where I took my own life. Tears pricked my eyes. From my pocket, I pulled out a scrap of paper, edges worn soft with time. I handed it to him without a word. It was something he had written when we were 7, a lifetime voucher for complete forgiveness, no matter what Arya does. But that wasn't where my nightmare began. One moment, I was gripping a whip, its tip stained with blood. The next, I stood frozen, realizing what role I'd been given. The villain?
Me?
A faint groan snapped me back to the present. Daniel was in front of me, chained to the wall. His black hair hung in messy strands, his sharp jaw lost in shadow. His breathing was shallow, his head bowed. His wrists were bound in iron cuffs, his shirt torn open to reveal lashes of angry red across his chest. This was the same boy I had grown up with, the same friend I had secretly loved for 10 years, until the heroine appeared. That was when my villainy in the plot skyrocketed. I had framed the heroine repeatedly. I had kidnapped Daniel, locking him away like some prize I refused to release. And now, the story had brought me to the point where he looked at me with eyes full of raw, cornered animal hatred. I wasn't cut out to be this kind of person. I'd always been a coward, someone who avoided cruelty. But it wasn't too late to change things. I reached for the chains again. "Arya Astor," he rasped, voice laced with mockery. "What new game are you playing now?" My memory flashed to 3 days earlier. I had tapped his cheek with the whip and told him we'd play a maze game. 7 rooms, 1 way out. If he found the right door, I'd let him go. He had tried every path until he collapsed, only for me to appear, wild-eyed, demanding. "Why do you only see her? You're mine, Daniel." That her was Hannah, the female lead, his partner in both work and love. The two of them had been inseparable since college, building their dreams together until they reached their happy ending. And I, in the story, was the obstacle they had to destroy. Daniel's patience snapped. He seized my shoulders with such force, I swore, I heard bone creak. "When are you letting me go?" His expression was murderous. I bit back a sob, then made a desperate choice, throwing myself into his chest and wailing. I was wrong. I was possessed. "I'm only 20. You have to let me make mistakes." For a moment his body went still. Then he hissed in pain, probably from reopening his wounds, and shoved me away. "You think an apology erases everything? Who do you think you are?" I pulled out the old paper again, his childhood promise to forgive me no matter what. Back then, he had written it just to stop me crying over spilled milk. In my past life, I had tried using it once more before he sent me away, but it had been far too late. Now, Daniel stared at the note, stunned. The ice in his gaze thawed, if only a fraction. He released me and left, pausing at the door to say, "Don't ever do anything that disgusts me again." When he was gone, I crumpled to the floor, my heart pounding like I'd escaped death. Then I grabbed my phone.
"Mom.
Send me to study abroad.
Now."
"Germany. I want Germany." Let Daniel and Hannah have each other. I became aware that I was playing the role of the malicious female supporting character. The sight before me was almost surreal. Daniel Thorne, the male lead, my childhood friend, and the man I had once imprisoned and tormented, was on his knees before me, body trembling, teeth clenched in pain. My fingers fumbled at his restraints, my hands shaking just as badly as his. A short, cold laugh escaped him. "Weren't you planning to kill me, Miss Astor?" I froze in place. In the novel's plot, my character Arya Astor didn't simply dislike Daniel. She had locked him away, physically and emotionally breaking him, humiliating him in every way possible. By the end, he had her confined to a psychiatric hospital, where she took her own life. Tears welled up in my eyes. I reached into my pocket and took out a small, crumpled piece of paper worn soft with age. I placed it in his hands. It was something Daniel had written when we were both 7 years old, a childish note that read, "A voucher for unconditional forgiveness, no matter what Arya does." The next moment, I remembered holding a whip, its tip still wet with blood, staring at it in disbelief. The villainess?
Me?
My hand trembled as I pointed at my own chest. Me? A low, pained groan pulled me back to the scene in front of me. Daniel stood, or rather, knelt before me, his black hair in disarray, his sharp jaw lost in the damp shadows. His wrists hung limply from the iron chains that bound him, his breathing shallow and weak. Daniel Thorne, the male lead of this redemption arc, and the same boy I had grown up alongside. In the story, I had carried a quiet crush on him for 10 years, trailing after him like some devoted little shadow. That is, until the heroine appeared. Then my villainy meter skyrocketed. I didn't just plot against the female lead again and again. I also kidnapped Daniel, locked him away, and subjected him to one cruelty after another. By the time it was over, Daniel's disgust toward me was absolute. It was he who personally had me committed to a psychiatric ward. Soon after, I lost my mind and threw myself from a window, ending my life. And now, here he was, not yet the powerful tycoon he would one day become, kneeling before me. The collar of his white shirt hung open, revealing angry red lash marks across his chest. His face was pale and slick with cold sweat, his lips trembling. When our eyes met, I knew instantly this was bad. His gaze was that of a cornered beast, burning with raw, feral hatred. I wanted to cry. Arya Aster, had always tried to live kindly, to be a good person. I was a coward, not a villain. But it wasn't too late to change my fate. My hands shook as I reached for the shackles on Daniel's wrists. A sharp, mocking laugh cut through the air. His lips curved upward in a cold smile. Those beautiful, almond-shaped eyes were merciless. His hoarse voice was full of derision. "What are you scheming this time, Miss Aster? Daniel really must despise me. He used to simply call me Arya." He narrowed his eyes, his shadow falling over me like a suffocating weight. "What trick are you trying now?" Memories came rushing back. 3 days ago, I had lightly tapped his cheek with the whip, smiling as I told him we were going to play a little game. I'd unfastened his shackles and tossed him a key, explaining that this basement was a maze with 7 hidden rooms. Only one door led outside. If he could find it, he'd be free to go. He had searched every path, tried every door, until exhaustion dropped him to the floor. That's when I had appeared, eyes wild and red. I had questioned him frantically. "Do you want to leave that badly? Wouldn't it be better to stay here with me forever? Are you going to see Hannah again? Why do you only have eyes for her? Daniel, you're mine. You're not allowed to look at anyone else. If you try to escape again, I'll kill you." Hannah, the female lead, was his destined partner. After a falling out with his family during high school, Daniel left for university in the city. By junior year, he had co-founded a company with a brilliant female lead. They were inseparable, working side by side in labs, competing in contests, building their business together. Their feelings grew stronger with each passing day. After overcoming countless obstacles, they would earn their happily ever after. And I was the largest obstacle in their path. I didn't just make trouble for the heroine. I also kidnapped Daniel right before a major competition. I closed my eyes, the shame almost unbearable. Arya Aster, what a reckless life you've lived. This was the classic, offend the male lead and meet a terrible end scenario. Daniel's patience finally snapped. He seized my shoulders, the pain sharp enough to make me think something cracked. "Arya Aster, answer me. What exactly are you trying to do? When are you letting me go?" His face was frighteningly dark, his expression almost murderous. I was on the verge of tears. After 2 seconds of meeting his glare, I inhaled deeply, then buried my face against his chest. My wailing was loud and unrestrained. "Daniel, I was wrong. I was terribly wrong. I must have been possessed." Desperation poured into my words. Sincerity was my last weapon. If I groveled fast enough, maybe I could outrun the tragic ending waiting for me. I sniffled, looking up at him with teary eyes. "Daniel, I'm only 20. You have to let me make mistakes." The air seemed to turn solid. He stiffened, then hissed in pain from his wounds, shoving me away. "Do you think one sorry wipes everything away? Who do you think you are?" His eyes were bloodshot, the hatred in them deep enough to strip me to the bone. It was over. He still wanted me dead. With tears streaming down my face, I fumbled in my dress pocket for the crumpled paper. Carefully unfolding it, I held it out to him. It was that childhood note, the one promising to forgive me no matter what. Back then, it had been over something silly. He had spilled my milk, and I had thrown a tantrum. "Daniel, usually calm, had panicked and written that promise just to calm me down. In my previous life, I'd tried showing it to him again, right before he had me committed. But by then, my sins had been far too great. Even so, right now it was my last hope. Daniel stared at it, clearly stunned I'd kept it all these years. His lips pressed into a thin line, but some of the ice in his eyes began to melt. He released my shoulders, stood, and headed for the door. Just before leaving, he looked back. "Arya Astor," he said evenly. "Don't ever do anything that disgusts me again." Disgust. Yes, to him this obsessive, twisted emotion was disgusting. I crumpled to the floor, still trembling from the encounter. Then suddenly I pulled out my phone. "Mom, send me abroad. Right now. Germany. I want to study in Germany." Daniel belonged to the heroine. They were perfect for each other. I would have to be insane to compete for him again, and get myself killed in the process. 3 years of university overseas, 7 years if I could stretch it, and by then the male and female leads would have settled into their happy ending. I'd make sure not to repeat my mistakes. I'd make sure to survive. Daniel's reappearance lit a spark in his team, who had been adrift without their leader. The competition was no small affair. Major investors were watching closely, eager to spot the next rising star to fund. On the first day of the semi-finals, a news alert flashed across my phone. I glanced at the screen. Daniel stood tall in a flawlessly tailored suit, his frame lean and upright, his features razor-sharp. The rimless glasses perched on his nose lent him a quiet, intellectual aura. It was hard to reconcile this polished man with the battered, broken figure I had seen in the basement. Through the chaotic press of people, the camera caught the exact moment his eyes found the female lead. It wasn't the cold, hate-filled stare he reserved for me. When he looked at her, there was steadiness, confidence, an unspoken message. "I've got you." He seemed unstoppable. I turned off the phone. In the novel, what I had done in the basement was only the beginning. Later, I would strip Daniel of every last shred of pride, dragging him down from a noble young man to a twisted shadow of himself. I would take everything from him until the only thing he could do was cling to me to survive. And in the end, the story had me trying to mow him and his family down with a car. I pressed a hand to my temple, the throbbing behind my eyes relentless. That wasn't love. It was calculated cruelty. No wonder Daniel despised me. Clutching my study abroad application, still needing the dean's signature, I quickened my pace. "Daniel, Berlin is over 5,000 miles away, with a 7-hour time difference. That's as far as I can get from you." These past few days had been a blur of paperwork, signatures, and running between offices to finalize my transfer. I was walking down the street, eyes glued to my phone as I answered a message from my department head, when I collided with someone. I rubbed my forehead, about to apologize. A familiar, amused voice greeted me. "Well, if it isn't Daniel's little childhood sweetheart. What are the odds of bumping into our Daniel again, huh?" I looked up, right into Daniel's cold, guarded stare. His brows drew together, his hand curling into a fist at his side. He studied me for a moment, and though his gaze held its usual resistance and distaste, there was something else buried there, something I couldn't read. His voice was clipped. "What are you doing here?" My throat tightened. I opened my mouth, but the name, Daniel, caught on my tongue. The person beside him either didn't notice or didn't care about the tension. "What do you mean, coincidence?" The way Arya sticks to Daniel, she's probably got a GPS on him. Wherever he goes, she follows. The group laughed it off as a joke. But I stiffened, because it wasn't entirely untrue. My phone really did have a tracker linked to his. After the female lead had entered his life, they had moved in step together. Partners in a shared world that excluded me entirely. The anxiety ate at me until I'd given in to an ugly impulse, installing a location tracker on his phone. Every time I accidentally crossed paths with him, it was staged. I kept him under constant watch, feeding my possessiveness, even enjoying the teasing from others. I would manufacture moments of false closeness in front of the female lead just to stake my claim. It suffocated Daniel. And me. One of the group piped up again. "Why didn't you come to watch the competition, Arya? Did you two fight?" If only it were that simple. It wasn't a fight, it had nearly been murder. I saw Daniel's expression darken, and my gaze flicked instinctively toward the heroine. Hannah lived up to her name. Cool, elegant, untouchable. She had heard the teasing, yet her expression stayed perfectly composed. There was even the faintest glimmer of amusement in her eyes. She didn't need to stoop to my level. But outside of the scripted story, I was just a coward. Before I could think of a way to slip away, a brash, taunting voice rang out. "Where's Hannah?" I turned toward it, and was nearly blinded by the gleam of 24-karat gold hair. The man's wild gaze glittered with mischief and danger. An iron pipe rested in his grip, the veins on his hand standing out sharply. Combined with his outrageous hair color, he looked every bit the image of a cocky street thug. A shame, really. I shook my head. Challenging the male and female leads was suicide for a minor character. Still, he seemed oddly familiar. Daniel shifted subtly to shield Hannah from him, his voice low and icy. "What do you want with her?" The stranger raised a brow, unflinching. "Someone told me to pass on a message." He tapped the pipe against the pavement for emphasis. His lips curled in a faint smirk. "Miss Thorne, you'd better be careful walking alone. Watch out for." Before he could finish, I shot forward like a startled cat. It was him. On tiptoe, I threw an arm around his neck and clapped my hand over his mouth, forcing a sheepish laugh. "Sorry, this is my friend. Wrong person. We'll just catch up somewhere else." The laugh felt painfully fake. I was ready to drag him off, but Daniel's hand closed around my wrist. His eyes flicked to where my arm was wrapped around the so-called thug, then returned to my face, displeasure etched into every line. "I didn't know you kept company like this." What was with him? After everything I'd done, shouldn't he hate me? Why did he suddenly sound concerned? I blurted out, "We just met, while you were busy with the competition. I haven't been following you lately, so you wouldn't know." "Daniel, you always told me to make other friends." "Well, I made one. Aren't you happy?" I studied him cautiously. Back then, whenever my clinginess wore on his patience, he would pinch the bridge of his nose, swallow his frustration, and gently suggest, "Arya, maybe you should have other friends besides me." Now, in this strange in-between moment, I wanted nothing more than to leave him with a pleasant memory. Daniel didn't look happy. He didn't look angry either. He simply let go of my wrist, his fist clenching at his side. Those dark, bottomless eyes held mine in silence. Then he watched as I walked away. We had already put some distance between ourselves and the scene before Cole finally managed to shake himself free. He ran a frustrated hand through his messy hair. "What the hell was that about?" he asked, voice clipped and cold. I forced myself to look unbothered. Daniel was right there. "I was just making sure you didn't blow your cover." Yes, that was it. The thug threatening the female lead was Cole, and I was the one who had hired him. Once he was paid, he did his job. He listened to my excuse, eyes narrowing with a sarcastic glint. "Relax," he said with dry amusement. "I've got professional standards. You paid me, so I won't rat you out." Then he leaned closer. His sharp gaze studied me like I was some cheap trick he'd seen too many times. "What's the matter, Miss Astor? Getting nervous?" I knew exactly what he was doing, pushing my buttons on purpose. But beneath his challenging tone, I caught a hint of unease.
He needed the money.
Cole had lost his parents young and grown up under the care of his grandmother, barely scraping by. Now, she was seriously ill, and the crushing medical bills had him at the edge of desperation. In the original plot, I had taken advantage of that. I turned him into my most ruthless tool, the muscle behind the villainous supporting character. And, of course, his ending had been just as tragic as mine. Cole had died on a stormy night after kidnapping the heroine. Cornered by police and using her as a human shield, he was gunned down when he tried to take her with him. The me from that story had bought his morals, his future, and even his life, and still never helped him save the grandmother he'd been fighting for. A sharp ache gripped my chest. I felt like I had woken from a nightmare, my whole body drained. That version of me terrified me. I pulled a bank card from my bag. "There's $1 million on this." Cole's expression shifted, amusement flickering briefly before his eyes turned darker, voice low and rough, holding back some twisted inner conflict. $1 million, that's enough to buy her life. I held up 2 fingers.
No.
2 lives. His frown deepened. "From now on, you'll be protecting Hannah Thorne. I don't want a single hair on her head touched." Hannah, as the female lead, had the perfect tragic backstory: a father who gambled away everything, a mother who doted only on her son, and a sick younger brother. A home splintered beyond repair. Think of it as money well spent, a bodyguard for her, and a small way to make up for everything I had done to her. I slipped the card into his shirt pocket and looked him dead in the eye. "As for you, you're going to start being a decent human being. Every day, you'll recite the core values of good citizenship 3 times in your head. If you don't, I let my voice sharpen. I'll tell your grandmother you've been burning your classmates with cigarettes at school. We'll see how long your good student image lasts. Cole's fierce, arrogant face cycled from red to pale to red again. The rush of satisfaction was unexpected. It felt good to do the right thing. I pressed a hand to my chest where the ache still lingered, my eyes prickling. How had I managed to commit so many awful acts before? The last light of the day bled into the horizon. The city was still thick with summer heat as I walked through a nearly empty barbecue street in a white sundress. Only a few of the stalls had customers, mostly shirtless men arguing over politics between swigs of beer, their laughter rough around the edges. I felt a pair of eyes trailing me, the kind that left you feeling dirty. I frowned and picked up my pace. After a few turns into an alley, night had swallowed the light completely. The sound of heavy footsteps followed close behind, each one quicker, closer. I sped up without thinking. Suddenly, 2 rough hands clamped down on my shoulders. A drunken, greasy voice slurred in my ear. "Hey, sweetheart, how about having a drink with your big brother?" I turned my head. A scarred, bloated face filled my vision. "Sir, sexual harassment is a criminal offense," I said evenly. He laughed, the mottled flesh on his face folding into deep lines. "Don't be like that," he sneered. "There aren't any cameras here." I smirked. "No cameras? Perfect." I raised my voice. "Get him." A cloth bag dropped from above, cutting off his view. Within seconds, Cole had him on the ground, fists slamming into him with brutal precision. This was Hannah's biological father. He had been abusing his wife and daughter for years while sinking deeper into his gambling habit. He was the kind of man who loitered in alleys like this, looking for young prey, and recently, his gambling debts had grown so steep that he'd soon be trying to force Hannah into selling herself to pay them off. The thought made my blood boil. I stepped forward and kicked him hard. Filth. When he finally went limp, I dusted off my hands. "Let's go," I told Cole. Cole glanced down at the man with eyes like ice, then ground his sneaker into the man's right hand. The injury would put him in bed for a couple of weeks, but if someone found him, the drugs he carried would ensure he stayed out of trouble, permanently. By the time Cole dropped me at the dorm, the breeze had cooled. Daniel was standing under a tree, waiting. A few tiny white petals clung to his shoulders, fallen from the branches above. I glanced in the direction Cole had gone, guilt pricking at me. Maybe I imagined it, but Daniel's eyes seemed to hold a shadow of resentment. "We're going to Mount Serenity tomorrow," he said. Half his face was hidden in shadow, making it hard to read him. I searched for a clue, but this distant, cold version of Daniel left me unsure how to act. They say a broken mirror can never be restored. No matter how close we had once been, there was now an unbridgeable gap. If I were in his place, after what the old me had done, I wouldn't forgive me either. Still, the sense of loss was sharp. After all, we had shared more than a decade together. Tentatively, I said, "Daniel, I know you're still angry. Don't worry. I won't bother you anymore." He cut me off. "Didn't we already make up?" I blinked. Under the moonlight, his brows knitted slightly in confusion. "Make up? Since when?" Before I could ask, he went on. "We're going to the temple on the mountain to fulfill a vow. We'll be camping there. You should come too and pray." Something crossed his mind, darkening his expression. "I've arranged for a master to see you." A master? Was he serious? Did Daniel actually believe I was possessed? An extreme materialist suddenly buying into gods and demons? I almost laughed, but the script didn't give me that freedom. In the original story, I had begged him to take me along, then used the trip to set up my cruelest trick yet, getting the heroine lost and having Cole push her down a slope. A shiver ran down my spine. Murder is a crime. Murder is a crime. "I'll pick you up tomorrow morning," Daniel said. I shook my head quickly. "No, I'm not going. I already have plans." "What plans?" His tone was clipped. Panic prickled my skin. Friend." He didn't even blink. "With Cole?" I froze. Daniel knew me too well. Aside from him, I had almost no friends. I could only nod. The wind stirred the leaves, scattering shadows over his face. His voice turned dangerously quiet. "How did you meet Cole?" Then, sharper, colder. "Miss Astor, how much did you pay him to be on your side?" The summer heat pressed down like a weight. It was the height of a sweltering summer, yet I felt as though I had been thrown into an ice cellar. My hands were numb, my feet like blocks of ice, every drop of blood in me frozen solid. So that was the real reason Daniel had come. Not to talk, not to reconcile, but to warn me, to tell me to keep my distance from Hannah. But I wasn't planning to hurt her anymore. The gentle, warm face I once remembered was now cold, detached, a stranger's. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but the words stuck in my throat. You had Cole follow Hannah, stir up trouble at her part-time job until she was fired, and now you're standing here threatening her in front of me. Daniel's voice was sharp, his composure cracking. Arya asked her, "What exactly are you trying to pull?" I stayed silent. The peaceful mask he had been wearing shattered completely, and it was all because of the female lead. Without realizing it, I took a few steps back. But before I could retreat further, he caught my wrist. Cole isn't a good man, he said, eyes burning. Has he dragged you down with him? I stared into his anger, my whole body going cold. Daniel, I asked softly, what if this is simply who I am? Sometimes, I truly couldn't tell the difference anymore. Was the me in the original story and the me now actually any different? Maybe that was why I was so desperate to run. It wasn't just the thought of hurting Daniel or Hannah. It was the fear of becoming that woman from the story, someone without morals, without conscience. A madwoman. I exhaled slowly. Just leave me alone. Under the yellow streetlight, I noticed the deep shadows beneath his eyes, the exhaustion weighing on his features. What's gotten into you? He pressed, his voice heavier. Tomorrow, you're going to apologize to Hannah. As for the rest, I'll take care of it. But you, he rubbed his temples, frustration building. You can't keep making trouble like this forever. Arya, be good. I can't always clean up your messes. To me, the best solution wasn't to apologize. It was to disappear. I yanked my wrist free, lifting my chin with stubborn defiance. Daniel, you know I can't stand Hannah. Why force me to apologize to her? If you don't want me to harm her, then you two should stay out of my sight forever. His expression went blank. 13 days without seeing each other, and this is how you greet me? I met his gaze squarely. Daniel, I don't want to see you again. The moon dipped lower in the sky. A warm night breeze, carrying the scent of grass and leaves, drifted through the open balcony. I watched him walk away, his figure shrinking in the distance. Then I pulled out my phone and sent a voice message. Dad, make sure you invest in Daniel's team. They have real talent. In the original plot, I had done the opposite, blocking him at every turn, using my family's influence to make his work harder, especially after his falling out with his own relatives. This time, I wanted to clear the path for him. From now on, we would go our separate ways. At first light, a cool breeze rustled the leaves outside my window. Daniel had sent me several messages. I didn't answer. Then he called. Arya, stop this, he said tiredly, as though speaking to a spoiled child. I gripped the phone tighter. Daniel, I told you yesterday. I'm not going. His tone softened slightly. You always begged to come to these events before. If I didn't take you, you'd sulk for days. I had no words for that. The me, in the original plot, had been possessive to the point of madness, unable to stand the thought of Daniel and Hannah smiling together somewhere out of sight. She would cry, scream, and destroy whatever she could. No one on Daniel's team liked her. No wonder he had grown tired of it. Daniel, I have plans today. I really can't go. It's Saturday, he said flatly. What plans? Right on cue, Cole's voice rang out in the background. Arya, you want a bun or a donut? The line went silent for 2 seconds. Then, click, he hung up. I slid my phone into my bag and took the breakfast from Cole without comment. I hadn't lied to Daniel. I really was busy arranging my withdrawal from school, busy applying to new ones, busy leaving his world behind. At the dorm entrance, Daniel leaned against a sleek black car, his black shirt matching the chill in his presence. Without saying a word, he caught my wrist and guided, almost shoved, me into the passenger seat. Click. The seatbelt unspooled sharply. His cool palm brushed across my collarbone, skimming my chest, before securing the buckle with swift precision. Then his hand rested at my waist, pressing me back into the seat. It wasn't affection. It was a restraint, a warning. The nearness of his face, barely an inch away, sent a jolt through me. His gaze was locked, dark irises blazing with barely contained anger beneath furrowed brows. His Adam's apple shifted as he spoke. Arya, behave. The door closed with a hard thud, yet my heart continued its erratic pounding. The drive took us toward Mount Serenity. When we started the climb, I lagged behind the group, absently plucking petals from a wildflower. A cold bottle of water appeared in my line of sight. I looked up to see Daniel, pale-skinned, with a sheen of sweat on his brow glinting under the sunlight. His expression was frosty, but I caught the thread of concern in his eyes. "What's wrong?" he asked. I softened my tone deliberately. "Daniel, I can't walk anymore. Can I just wait in that pavilion up ahead until you're done?" The mountain was small, only a few hundred meters high, and guilt pricked at me. He looked taken aback, maybe because we'd barely spoken without hostility for so long. My shift in attitude eased something in his face. He crouched down in front of me. "Get on." I instinctively took a step back. When I didn't move, his frown deepened. "You always got tired when we hiked before." "I always carried you," he said. I had no response. He had always been good to me. Since childhood, he'd given me everything I asked for and shielded me whenever I made mistakes. I had been spoiled into craving his affection, and eventually, obsessed by it. At the mountaintop, the others busied themselves setting up tents and a barbecue. I drifted away into a dense patch of forest, tall trees overhead and thick undergrowth underfoot. That was when I realized Hannah had followed me. She didn't seem happy to be here, but handed me a bottle of insect repellent. "Don't wander off. You'll just make trouble for everyone," she said flatly. I blinked, a little surprised, but accepted it. "Thanks." "Daniel's busy with the tent," she added sharply. "He asked me to keep an eye on you. If there's nothing else, I'm leaving." She took a few steps, then paused. "Daniel and I already agreed. We'll go our separate ways after graduation. You don't need to see me as competition." Her words sent a strange current through me, sharp and unbearable, twisting in my chest. Even if she meant it as reassurance, my mind warped it into arrogance. Before I knew it, my hand was reaching toward her sleeve. We stood on the edge of a slope, and one shove would send her tumbling. But instead, I shifted my weight and let myself fall. The ground rushed up to meet me, knocking the air from my lungs. I rolled, skin scraping, stars bursting in my vision, until something stopped my momentum. Pain overwhelmed me, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was in a warm embrace, Daniel's. His face was a mask of fury. "I told you it had nothing to do with me," Hannah's voice said sharply nearby. She stood her ground as Daniel confronted her. Their roles reversed from the original story, her stubborn, me fragile. "Enough, Hannah. If you have a problem, come to me. I'll make it right. But don't touch her," Daniel said icily. "You're being unreasonable," Hannah snapped. Ignoring the ache in my body, I spoke weakly. "Daniel, I fell on my own." Leaning close, I whispered in his ear. "I tried to push her, but I missed and fell instead. See how much I hate you both. So stay away from me." His pupils tightened, his face unreadable. It hurt, physically, emotionally. Through the haze, a childhood memory surfaced. Daniel, no older than a boy, pretending to be stern as he recited, "See good as if you can never attain it. See evil as if you are touching boiling water." His first lesson to me, be good. Tears slid from the corners of my eyes, burning as they fell. I spent a week in the hospital. Daniel didn't visit once, though I sometimes caught a glimpse of a familiar figure disappearing around corners. Cole was the one who stayed by my side, even teaching me old texts. After my release, Daniel only called once, to say he wanted to take me to a psychiatric hospital. The thought scared me so much I nearly blocked his number. My withdrawal from school was quick. On moving day, Cole came to help with the luggage. His once bright blonde hair had dulled, his appearance less sharp than before. "Remember your promise," I told him. "Take care of Hannah for me after I'm gone. She's had enough bad luck meeting someone like me." Cole lifted the last suitcase into the car, muttering, "That Daniel looks at me like I'm a killer. And I can't even get near their lab." "You took my money," I reminded him. "I know," he said quietly. When everything was loaded, he asked, "You're really going abroad?" "Of course. I'm not playing games with Daniel," I said. He didn't answer right away, just frowned in thought. I reassured him, "I'll handle your grandmother's medical bills. Call me if you need anything." His frown deepened, but he turned away stubbornly. I patted his shoulder. "Cole, promise me you'll live well. Don't sell yourself to anyone. And protect Hannah. Not just for her sake, but for yours. If I hadn't dragged you into this, you wouldn't be on the wrong side." Before I could say more, a familiar, icy voice cut through the air behind us. "What are you two doing?" Daniel was still in his suit, as if he had stepped straight out of a meeting. He stood tall and rigid, the air around him growing heavier, the atmosphere pressing down. Behind his glasses, his sharp eyes studied me closely. Then his gaze flicked to the open trunk of the car. The temperature in his eyes dropped instantly. Moving out of the dorm? A bead of sweat slid across my palm. Danger. Without thinking, I hid the truth about leaving the country. I'm not used to dorm life, I replied quickly. I'm going to live off campus. With him. Daniel's question came fast, his eyes narrowing. His stare cut toward Cole, and his expression chilled further. Before I could speak, he added, voice low and edged with menace. No wonder. You've barely contacted me lately. His Adam's apple shifted with the force of his restraint. Slowly, he reached up and removed his glasses with deliberate precision. His face was all ice as he walked toward me. He gently lifted my hand from Cole's shoulder, as though handling something fragile. Then, he turned. The rush of air came first. His fist, tense and veined, smashed into Cole's face. Daniel crouched, seizing Cole by the collar, his tone disturbingly calm.
Cole, right?
I looked into you. No parents to teach you any better. Do you enjoy wrecking other people's relationships? I had never seen this side of Daniel before. The world's golden boy, cool, composed, endlessly gracious. The man who had once been gentle and patient with me. Now, he was a lion on the brink of tearing someone apart, his words venomous. Cole didn't fight back. He wiped the blood from his lip with the back of his hand and let out a mocking smirk. My heart nearly jumped out of my chest. Daniel, have you lost your mind? He turned toward me, a smile that wasn't a smile curving his lips. His eyes were rimmed in crimson, as if stained with blood. Through gritted teeth, his voice trembled with fury. Arya Aster. I'm still alive. Beneath all that rage was a faint, almost hidden hurt. Don't forget, we never broke up. Hannah and I are only classmates. We won't even be working together anymore. Arya, stop pushing me away. It felt like being struck. My thoughts scattered. After a long pause, I finally spoke, dazed. Daniel, in my mind, we were never together. His eyes widened in disbelief. It was anger, but also something almost ridiculous to him, like he couldn't believe the insult. Arya Aster, he said, voice taut. Are you toying with me? I stared at him, a mess of emotions twisting inside. So this was the truth. What I had fought for so desperately, willing to cross every line to obtain, I had already had from the very start. Daniel left. The look he gave me was nothing but unwillingness and deep disappointment. Later, in the car, I pulled out a first aid kit, ready to tend to Cole's injury. If he likes you and you like him, why are you running away? Cole asked, leaning back. I dabbed iodine onto cotton with a knowing look. You wouldn't understand. Daniel belongs to Hannah. They're not together now, but they will be. That's fate. Cole glanced at me, but said nothing, just studied me for a long time. Arya Aster. Your eyes are red, he murmured. He dragged a hand through his hair in frustration. I should be trash-talking him after that punch, he admitted, but I've followed them before. There's really nothing between him and Hannah. Because of you, he even came to find me. He stopped, lips pressed tight, resisting more words. I lowered my gaze. Cole, have you forgotten why you were following Hannah in the first place? The first time we met, I told you to. My throat tightened. It took effort to finish. To ruin her hands. So she could never do experiments again. To destroy her and to drag you down with her. Even after that, I went to find Daniel. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words kept echoing in my mind, heavy with guilt. I was supposed to be the twisted, jealous second female lead, consumed by love. Instead, I had become the scheming, double-faced white moonlight for both men. I needed to explain myself to Daniel. I needed to apologize to Hannah for everything. And I had to say goodbye properly. Before starting over, living as the real Arya Aster. The hallway was quiet. The lab door creaked open. I stood and hurried over, legs stiff from squatting too long, my steps uneven. What are you doing here? Daniel's face was shadowed, irritation still lingering. But when he saw me, a flicker of pity softened his gaze. Why were you sitting here instead of calling me? I smiled. I sent you a message. You must have missed it. I didn't want to disturb your experiment by calling. By the way, is Hannah here? I pulled a folder from my bag. Inside was my written apology and a check large enough to cover her brother's medical bills. The rest was up to her. I came to give her this. And to apologize. Daniel hesitated, but before he could reply, the lab door swung open again. A beautiful figure stepped out, glancing at me with disdain. I still smiled, waving politely. Hannah. The word barely left my lips when the world seemed to freeze. The colors drained away, time itself halted. A flat, cold voice echoed inside my skull. Plot correction. When movement returned, my body was no longer my own. I was nothing but a spectator, watching myself grip a knife, my face twisted with hatred. Hannah Thorne. Compete with me for Daniel? Go to hell. Daniel didn't even hesitate. He stepped in front of her. The blade sank into his shoulder, stopping just short, but blood still ran in a steady crimson stream. Daniel, do you love her so much that you'd take a knife for her? Blood continued to flow, a steady, crimson stream. Daniel, do you love her that much? Are you willing to risk your life for her? I was consumed with jealousy, full of rage and resentment. Daniel's face was pale, but still, he reached out and gently covered my eyes, shielding me from the sight of blood. Arya, he murmured softly, don't be afraid. Don't do the wrong thing. From the void, I could only watch, numb. Pain no longer reached me. Daniel was rushed to the hospital. Even as he was being loaded into the ambulance, he was still focused on me. Arya, don't worry. Go to school. I'll handle everything. His face was ghostly white from blood loss, yet he remained the Daniel who wanted to protect me from every harm. Even Hannah, who had always despised me, couldn't resist speaking to me. Arya asked her, you should be grateful. No matter what you do, Daniel cleans up your messes. Otherwise, do you think I wouldn't have fought back? Her cold glance swept over us, and she muttered under her breath, 2 lunatics. I felt detached, floating between the void and my own body, sometimes gripping the knife. After handing the folder to Hannah, I stumbled away. Once I regained control, I booked the earliest flight to Berlin. I didn't enroll in school. I found a quiet, small town and settled there. My landlady was a kind, elderly Chinese woman, devout in her Christian faith. She occasionally visited to check on her properties. That day, she brought me 2 bags of fresh fruit. Returning from a long walk, I smiled as I accepted them. Did you go searching again today? She asked hesitantly, a trace of pity in her eyes. Not yet, I said, smiling. Nothing feels right. Your illness, she pressed. Won't you get a second opinion? There's always hope while you're alive. I shook my head gently. There's no cure. The doctor said it's terminal. With a heavy heart, she left. I unfolded a map and continued my search for a burial plot. Sun in summer, snow in winter. Autumn leaves returning to the earth, feeding the spring flowers. If I had one final defiance in this world, it would be death. I didn't want to hurt Daniel. I didn't want to harm innocent people. I didn't want my elderly parents to have a murderer as a daughter. I searched for 3 months, finding nothing suitable, until I encountered a man in a black overcoat, solemn as a winter sun, yet his eyes swirled with uncontrollable longing. I stepped back, and he looked alarmed. Then he strode forward, taking my hand in his, the grip so firm it felt as though our flesh merged. Arya Astor, he whispered, pulling me into his arms, voice trembling. I didn't resist. I smiled, saying softly, Daniel, let me tell you a story. Surprisingly, the words flowed. In the story, the male and female leads lived happily ever after, and the wicked female supporting character received her deserved ending. Daniel remained silent throughout. When I finished, he looked down at me, his eyes slightly red. Arya, that's not how the story ends, he murmured. I froze. How could he know? There was a part one hadn't shared. In the story, 3 months after their marriage, Daniel had leapt to his death. At his funeral, Hannah told reporters he died of depression, that their marriage was merely business, and their love had been shallow. Then she returned to dominate the business world. Daniel held my hand, caressing it with quiet reverence. His gaze was heavy with the weight of years, his gentleness unmasked. Arya, let me tell you a story too, he said. After she died, he lived in deeper pain than ever. He felt like he had forgotten something precious. He thought of it day and night, haunted by nightmares. When he began to remember, he realized it was time to be with her. A sharp ache shot through my chest. What did he forget? He brushed a stray strand of hair from my face, gazing at me as if I were a treasure. Do you remember when you broke my father's antique vase as a child? How could I forget? I murmured. Back then, his father had beaten him after he took the blame for me. I had cried, apologizing, promising never to repeat my mistake. Yet the boy who had taught me, lesson by lesson, the meaning of goodness, only smiled indulgently. It's just a vase. It's broken. I will always be with you, always protect you. Memories flooded me. I stared at Daniel, emotions crashing in waves. Arya, he said, don't be afraid. I won't break my promise again. When did you know all this? Asked, staring at him. He placed my hand gently on his shoulder, solemn as if swearing an oath. I have you to thank for this. Though tears stung, I forced a small smile. Daniel, aren't you afraid? What if one day I lose control and stab you? He wiped the tears from my eyes with a light smile, carefree. Then I'll hand you the knife. I buried my face in his chest, sobbing. I never wanted to hurt you. His eyes reddened as he pulled me closer. I know. I should have known. The Arya I raised is the kindest, most loving girl in the world. The last rays of the setting sun bathed the forest. Daniel and I walked hand in hand through the autumn woods, along the road home, toward an unknown destiny.